Hello everyone and welcome back to Painting with Martin. Today we're back with another series of the Karak the Regent series that I've been painting. This time it's actually time for Elspeth the Warrior Princess. And unfortunately you can't actually see this one on the box art here. I should put it down like this. Because this is actually part of the promo pack that you can get separately. But for some reason she's actually part of this miniature set. And you can get the rules and the card art and everything like that if you buy the promo pack either from Alba Games or from one of your friendly local board game shops or online. So Elspeth is a fairly, I wouldn't say difficult figure to pick, but she has some nice details that it might be tricky to paint. I'm going to use mostly contrast paints from Citadel here, but if you haven't got around to buy them or you don't want to use them, I will actually present you with an alternative paint as well. She is a very golden purple character, and that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with actually painting the gold part here, because that will take longer to dry. And for that, I'm using a Retributor armor from Citadel Colors range. And for this one, I'm going to use a little bit of water for it. I'm going to put it out on my palette over here. And that is to make sure that the paint will not cake on all the areas where we don't want it to drop a little bit there. And the reason I start with the gold is that the gold has quite a dominant color. So I want to see how it interacts with the rest of the paint when it comes to it. I'm going to clean this one up so I don't touch the golden part here. There's going to be a lot of gold on my plastic sheet here. And for this one, I'm going to use it on her armor parts over here, as well as her this one here, the arm guard here. And if I get it on other parts here, it's not a problem. We can fix it later, as we always do. So that's the arm guard. A little bit on the inside here on the arm guard. So here I can see here the inside here of the arm guard might be a little bit tricky to reach. See here I already touched a little bit here, so I can smudge it around and before it gets too dominant. And I may have to cover that up later. I'm using a size 4 brush for this one, but you can use something much smaller, as long as you feel comfortable with it. And this is the base step stage. We are going to cover some of it in a wash later on, but for now, since we use contrast paints most of the time, we are not going to cover many things with a wash anyways. Also here, now I'm touching over her torso armor, which is something of a breastplate. And already she's looking quite much nicer than compared before. Karak the Regent offered some really interesting cool features. A catch-up mechanic, among other things. As well as also, I don't want to go all the way in here to touch her skin part up here. Maybe I did that already. But her pauldrons here, her shoulder guards, we need to be covered by gold, of course. And if you can reach in the back, it would be nice. You can also turn it around and paint it a little bit more. So the Karak the Regent offers a catch-up mechanic, as I was saying. But also more heroes for the base game, and the option to play as Karak the Regent, which I'm going to play after, which is the catch-up mechanic, which means that if you're like hopelessly lost and you discover enough rooms, you can actually play as Karak the Regent, trying to take back his kingdoms and collect the most treasures. Whoever has the most treasures playing as the Regent wins the game, instead of defeating the dragon, which is commonplace. And now we're back to the other pauldron. And so you can see how I haven't used much of the golden color. I've used most of it on my brush to make sure that it doesn't pool in any way and that's a good way making sure that you have total control of the brush, and it also dries much faster. Coming back over here, there's a little bit of an inside here. Might be a bit tricky to get to, but if you can, it really makes a difference, because now it's time to refill the brush. Turn it around, come back inside here. If you have a hard time to reach, you can actually use a push method, which means you take this one and you push it inside and you just smooch it around a little bit, and that's a way to actually reach places where it's really hard to reach. And do that on this side as well, and that takes care of the armor details. Alright, looks quite okay already. And while we're at it, before we go to the next stage, I'm going to clean my brush. Always make sure you do that. Wipe it off with a piece of kitchen towel. And then, before going to the other areas, I'm going to clean up the gold parts that I made, mistakes that I made. Moving on to some Vallejo white that I'm going to cover some of the mistakes I made, because I really wanted to completely clean them before I apply the contrast color. And it's a little bit of a different color compared to the primer that I used. Here I made a small mistake as well as here. And here too. And also on the sword, which is going to be in a different color. So if you feel that you've made too much of the mistakes, you can use this one. Here's a little bit on the hair as well. And leave it to dry completely, and then you're good to go. So with this one done, I'm going to do the same thing for before. Now I'm going to apply the contrast paint for the hair. And for the hair, she has a blonde color, so I'm going to use some contrast Iyanden yellow from Citadel. Give it a good shake. I haven't used this color before, if I'm not mistaken, so it will be my first time using it. We'll see how that one pans out. Using the same brush, size 4, and I want to make sure that I angle the miniature like this so it doesn't drip on the golden armor. Like this. Only taking a little bit of paint on the brush, making sure it doesn't get into the ferrule here, which is the metal part, because it can really ruin the brush, especially if it's a contrast paint or a wash or a metallic color, because it really devastates the brushes. So when you've covered this part, you can angle the miniature, and then you can paint the rest, moving backwards where I already have the paint. Here I painted a little bit on the face by mistake, which we may have to touch up as well when it's completely dry. Got a bit too eager. And moving back over here for this one. And also she has a little bit more of a string of lock of hair here, as well as underneath, making sure you cover every part here. Inside here, also important. The hair is really can make or break a character. Right now you can see that it has some nice tone on it that we can use to highlight later on. Leaving it like this, I'm going to close the paint pot and I'm going to clean my brush as we see fit. Moving it around like this. I have a Citadel paint pot which has some rifles on the bottom, which helps clean the brush. Now I recommend that one very much. You can use a regular paint cup if you like as well, which is not a problem. You see this one now is completely dry, which is nice. And now we're going to go over to give it the main colours, which is going to be some contrast Leviathan purple. And I've used this colour before when I painted the Dark Elf. Give it a good shake. Alternatively, if you, like I said before, instead of using the Iyanden yellow, you can use Flash Gits yellow or Avalon Sunset from Citadel, or just pure yellow, Amarylli, like pure yellow from Vallejo. If you don't want this colour, you can also use another called Skyish Purple here, which is this one, also contrast colour. Or you can use Naggaroth Night, followed by a wash of Druchii Violet, Citadel colours, as well as, and then a highlight of, say, Gene Stealer Purple, also possible. So these are the options for you. So opening this one up here, placing the pot safe and secure over here. Hopefully it will not tilt or move. So we're going to go over and cover her cape. I think this is the cape. Yeah. When I say cape, I'm always reminded by the cape that I got in Diablo 1, the first Diablo that I played extensively when I grew up. It's one of the best computer games I've ever played. And when I play Karak, it instantly reminds me of that game. It's a dungeon crawler filled with monsters at every turn and end. And so if you like Diablo, the computer game, Karak the board game might be for you. So I'm covering it here with the quiet moving downwards, and when I come up towards here, the colours that I've used before, like the gold and the yellow, I'm going to try to be more careful to make sure that I don't cover anything here with this very dominant colour. Angling the miniature like this might be nice to produce enough results, and hopefully you can see this one too. Then we angle the miniature to get the edge here, adding a little bit more of the paint. And then here the tricky parts come here, where you have to get behind here, and this is where you might go wrong. So before that we cover all the other areas. The cape on the back side here, back side of the cape. Moving the brush in here that I showed you is a nice technique. Might not be so good for the brush, but it's a nice way of reaching underneath certain areas, pushing in the brush into the area you want. And now the thing is, normally you would paint her arms a skin color, but according to the card art, it's actually purple, so we paint these ones too. And that leaves us with less mistakes to make if you don't paint over the gold armor. As always, I try to keep the figures as close to the card art as possible. If there is limited card art, or there's simply not enough card art, then I simply try to think about what would this one look historically. And over here as well, we also have her forearm. Has to be in this color too. And right now it looks very dominant, but we forgot to paint the gold here on her gloves, but we're going to come back and do that last, after this one. So I'll see here if we can reach the last stage underneath here. looks quite okay. There's a little bit here, stage here that I want to cover. Also, before we move on, we also have her legs, which I also missed here with gold armor, which I'll come back to in a second, before we move on to the next. So legs here will be kind of like leggings of purple as well. Trying to get in underneath here and not touch up too much of the rest. Can be quite tricky to get the hang of it. I'll see if I can move up here so you can see. Can be very tricky to reach all these areas. Oh, there we go on the camera. Yeah, I'm also going to use this one opportunity to cover all the areas underneath here with this dark purple, because it saves us some time and doesn't say under on the card art what color the things underneath here is. Okay, now I'm going to switch my brush, and I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, and in this case I'm going to use a size 2 brush for the same color, but it's going to be in between each strand of, I'm going to put off my glasses here to give me more control because I'm starting to lose my eyesight a little bit. So here, it's going to be here in between the leather strands here. And that's probably the trickiest part of this miniature, to paint this. But if you get it right, it can really, really pop this miniature. And the other one. Try to paint it in one straight line. Leave it completely to dry. And then you go back here, do the same thing on the back. This one is a bit easier because it's wider. Move it into one line underneath. Angling the miniature. It is starting to look a little bit nicer. Like I said, it won't win you in the competitions, but it might actually help you making sure it looks a little bit better on the table. Putting this one down, and as I said, I'm going to go back to cover up the yellow part, the golden parts that we missed previously. And I'm taking a small brush for this one, size 0, and to make sure that I get all the golden parts right. So golden parts is going to be her greaves. I think that's what you call it in English. Not her shoes though. It's going to be another colour. Hopefully you'll be able to see this on camera. And this Retributor armor is really beautiful because it gives kind of like a darkish glow, which means that you can build up on the highlights as you see fit when you do the highlight stage, which I'm going to show you, of course. And then of course her gloves. Thank you first of all to all of you who have subscribed to my channel, by the way. It really helps me grow, and it really means a lot to me when you subscribe to my channel. So if you like what you're seeing here and you want to learn more about painting miniatures and miniatures for board games especially, then I very much would like it if you would click the subscribe button, and if you like it even more, leave a comment. Tell me what you think and feel about what I do so far. Here I can touch up some mistakes that I made, and underneath here there's some mistakes made away with the contrast paint. While I'm already at it, like this one, making sure that it's really clean when I go to the next stage. Something like this. And as you can see now, we've got we've got a good idea of what to paint next, and also where to place our efforts. So when you come to a point where you feel like what I'm going to do next, then you can think about what dries faster and what dries slower. So I'm going to go for natural steel here from Vallejo to paint the sword and all metal parts that wasn't painted with gold, of course. And you can use a German dark grey for this one, as I showed you previously in other videos, to give it a shadow approach. But this one has, according to the card art, a very silvery looking. So I'm going to paint it neat on her sword, and as well her sword guard, as well as the pommel, which is the area where the sword kind of stops. Turn it around. Make sure you got all the pommel right. I used to be a sword fighter, so I used to do reenactment until I got injured, and I didn't do it anymore. That's why I know these parts quite well. Going back over here, you can see there are some on the back of the sword here. Don't forget to cover it with the metal paint. And over here as well, taking great care not to touch the other parts that we painted. And angling the miniature like this to get all the nice details that we haven't covered. All the sword parts, such as this behind the sword here. And of course the pommel up here, covered with some gold. You can alternatively paint it in gold if you like, but I like to have a consistency and paint it. Don't forget the sword guard on the other side here, and the rest of the top of the sword too. I love the sculpt of this mini, by the way. So Albie, you did a great job. Whoever designed this one, you're the publisher. So thank you so much for you that you gave me these miniatures in Essenspiel last year, and I hope I can see you again this year. Alright, now the sword is done, most of it at least, and then we're going to go over we got 3 areas left. We've got shoes, left of the sword, of course, the leather part here, and the skin. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do the skin parts. And for that, we're going to use some armor painted Crusader skin, which is a speed paint. You can use some Cadian flesh and some Kislev flesh if you don't want to use a speed paint, or Galliman flesh if you want to use Citadel's range. And the reason I'm using this one is that A, it's fast, and that means you don't have to wait for the drying time. It makes the video shorter, and I like that. And also it gives me opportunity to quickly highlight afterwards on this one using some regular colors. Touching a bit on my thumb to make sure that it doesn't pool too much. You want it to pool in the eye sockets and around the mouth, and that's where the shadow is going to be. Don't forget there's a little bit on the back side, and that's it. That's the face. Leaving it to dry. It dries quite quickly. In rare circumstances it can dry about 10-15 minutes. As you can see here, the hair is mostly dry always, anyways. And now we're going back to the leather parts here. Leather parts is going to be a color I used before, and it's going to be, where was it? Ah yeah, there you go. Citadel contrast range Snakebite leather. Give it a good shake. Use the same size 2 or size 0 brush. You can even use a size 1 brush for this, to make sure you have complete control, and use it neat and not too much paint on the brush, and you simply move it from up, top to bottom in one single go. And then you also paint the leather belt here with this one. Top to bottom, top to bottom. A little bit more on the brush. Here you do it in stages. Make sure you don't paint on the sword. You can also cover the edges once you've done one of the belt hanging down, and top to bottom. And if you feel it pools too much, use the brush, soak it up, and move on. When this one is a little bit angled, so make sure you get it. And then you go back to the other ones. There's strands on the back, top to bottom. Paint the sword around all the way around. Go to the back, top to bottom, preferably in one go. Top to bottom in one go. Don't forget to paint the leather belt all the way around if you can. And here you have a little bit of a, I think this is leather, or you could actually be part of the purple. I'm going to paint it as leather, I'm not sure. Make sure you get everything where the primer is as well, so you don't leave any white parts. That's one of the good parts of priming it in white. And we've got here some areas that are quite tricky to get to. Using the same approach as before, trying to push the paint behind. Now we've got, for the leather part, we also got the behind here. See, I missed a little bit part of the purple here, which I can come back to in a bit. after we painted the leather and we know where the leather part is going to be. Same thing with the front. It's hanging behind here. And for this one, for the shoes, you can use the same thing, or you can use a Mournfang brown, and you can use the same thing as we do, since I already have it up here. Give it a leathery feeling for the shoes. And that's it. Now the only thing we've got left is the sword handle. And oops, fell around a little bit. Elspeth the Warrior Princess fell. Dear heavens. And for this one, I'm going to use some Mournfang brown from Citadel, not the contrast color, and it dries quite quickly anyways. I'm using neat. You can dilute it if you want to, and just a little bit here on the sword completes the base colors and some of the washes for Elspeth the Warrior Princess. Turn around and make sure you get everything. Before you are, oops, the brushes fell from my hand. Before you actually go over, feel like you're done, you can actually see like, okay, is this miniature going to be done most of all? Are there any white parts left before you go into the highlight stage? And this is a really good opportunity because once you're in the highlight stage, you don't want to go back for the base colors. So let's go back to the Leviathan purple, because I noticed some parts here are actually not purple and they should be. So we'll go back to this one before we go into the next stage. Here we have a little bit of white part here. What we have here. And we also got some white part underneath the skirt. Not really that necessary, but I'm a perfectionist when it comes to these ones. Here is also some parts here that we can do with purple. And I just want to make sure that it gets done. I don't think anyone looks under her skirt, at least I hope not. Otherwise it's going to be quite disturbing. Gives an opportunity here to paint the areas yellow, that not yellow but purple again, that were missed underneath the skirt, and also to touch them up if we want them more dominant, if the purple kind of dried out or the snakebite leather got too dominant. Which in this case I'm trying to do here, like this. And with this one done, we have a few parts here that we didn't do. As well as we also didn't do this one here. It's always something that you miss. Angling it around, did we miss any parts? Don't think that many parts are missed right now, and therefore we can continue going on, moving on to the next part of the miniature. This is what she looks like. I'm going to show you up an angle after I've closed the paint pot and washed my brush. And this is what the miniature looks right now before the highlight stage. And if you feel like you're done with this miniature, you can actually leave it like this. You can seal it with a matte varnish, and after you paint the base, and you're done. But if you want to continue to learn a few more techniques how to make this a little bit better, keep watching. And we're going to start with the hair. And the hair, let's see here if I did practically the hair. So for the hair, I'm going to dry brush some Flash Gits Yello from Citadel. And dry brushing is a nice technique to know, and I've used it a number of times before. Take my dry brush, which is a specialized dry brush from Mini War Paint. Really recommend it. And I take the brush, load it with paint, and then I take some kitchen towel and wipe most of it off the paint. And then I'm going to do it in like dabbing it around, as you see, like this, making sure that the strands of the hair and the wash or the contrast paint is still showing there. But I'm holding hair on the back in case the miniature would snap off from this from the mold, or whatever you call it. And it gives an opportunity to not, you can paint the individual strands as well with this color as well, but I think this one is kind of like a cheating way of painting the hair. And now I think she looks pretty good. Now for the Auric Armor Gold, I'm going to use the same technique, with this, which is dry brush. You can use it painting individual plates using Auric Armor Gold from Citadel. But I'm going to use the same technique, and I'm going to show you how it looks. This is a layer paint from Citadel, which means it's designed to go for the next stage. And I'm going to use it here on a dabbing it here on the front parts. And I don't touch the side and the rear, because this isn't where the sun is shining. I just want it on the areas where the miniature would receive the most attention. So here I got a little bit of spilling here on the sword, so I'm covering this one up with a little bit of a heavier dry brush. Here as well. You could, if you want to, cover the golden parts here with some Seraphim Sepia Wash and get an even better effect. But for this one, I'm not going to do that. Not for now. Might use it in a later stage. We'll see. And clean the brush. Clean the brush thoroughly and dry it. Make sure there's no gold paint on board. And then we're going to go back to painting some purple on it. We're going to use two paints. We're going to use some Naggaroth Night, followed by some Genestealer Purple. And we're going to use a dry brush of Naggaroth Night. First we'll close the paint pot. Like this. I'm putting this one over here. And for the Naggaroth Night, no, I did it in the wrong order, never mind. I'll do it this way. Just a little bit, trying it out. Was a little bit too light. So we'll go back to the original, my original plan, which is Naggaroth Night. Sometimes it happens, I do things in the wrong order. Yeah, that's more like the original tone. And you can use a heavy dry brush, or you can use a light dry brush, depending how much paint you actually want out. And the dry brush now will actually serve two purposes. It will blend the shades together. And I'm moving it around like this, like in a stickling motion, dabbing it around. And same thing here for the inner parts that is actually showing here. then I'm going to go for an individual highlight when it comes to the arms. Okay, looking like this, leave it to dry a little bit, and we'll go back for the individual highlight for Naggaroth Knight for the arms. Touching it up a little bit. Anywhere where the metallic paint might have touched too much. In between here as well, if you can. Especially on the front. In the back you don't have to be that particular. We'll just do it on the back here, making sure that there's no white spots here again that I've missed. And there we go. Now, clean this one up, and now we're going to go back for some individual touch-ups for some Genestealer purple. And what we do here is we're going to cover the edges. Which is a nice way of doing this. And the edges here, using the side of the brush, as well as a small highlight on the individual strands of purple going down here. See where the sun is shining, and that's where you want the most of the highlights here. I'm wiping off a little bit of the paint off my brush to make sure that I only get a little bit of paint on it, making sure that I have total brush control and that it doesn't smudge over the rest of the paint. And I'm trying to blend it in here together with the shadows, leaving the shadows showing where the Leviathan purple and the Genestealer purple is almost completely showing. So leaving it there, wiping it off. I'm layering it up in several layers until it blends in with the darker colors. Looking like this, you can see here the darker colors underneath here and the lighter ones on top. And we're going to do the same thing here for the inner cape, but since the inner cape has lots more shadows, I'm going to leave it here almost as it is. Moving over to the arms, only a small light touch up. Legs I'm leaving as they are. Go back here to the cape, moving in a stickling way, and then the final highlight for the purple is to trying to get in here with the purple as well. We'll see how that works. Something like this. And looking quite okay already. You can use some null oil on the swords if you like to highlight them. That's perfectly fine. I'm not going to do that. I want them kind of silvery as possible. That's even a word. Now, before we move over to the leather ones, which need to highlight, We are going to cover her face a little bit more, another highlight, and her face is very light, so I'm going to use straight Kislev flesh to it, which normally I would use Cadian flesh tone from Citadel. This is from Citadel as well, but as per the card art, it's very, very light skinned. So I'm going to try how this works out as well. On this one, we start with the nose. We move up on her forehead. And we cover her cheeks. And we don't paint the eyes. Not yet. The eye sockets, we leave them. We also leave the nose. We leave the nose and we leave the mouth. And we move down like this, as so. Now we can paint the ear here as well. That was accidentally painted by the hair color. And all the way up into the forehead. And she looks much better right now. Now we can actually go into leaving this one to dry. We can go into the highlight stage of the leather. Cleaning it off quite nicely and well. And for the leather, I'm going to use some XV88 from Citadel. And I'm going to use it neat and touching up the leather kind of like belt here as well. It almost blends into the gold here, which is fine. And now when this one is done, we'll leave, move over here a little bit. It's touching this one up, it got a little bit away, like this. When this one is done, we're waiting for everything to dry. We can actually go over for the metal parts, which is the sword. And for this one, we're going to use a color that I've used before. And it is Chainmail Silver from Game Color, from Vallejo. And this gives it a nice shiny finish. And you can use it as a streak from going from bottom to top. Painting the sword guard, the hat and the pommel. Touching up any space here that you've covered by mistake by other colors. Going around, making sure that everything is covered. You can leave it on the back side if you like. I'm just touching it up here now as I go. There's a pommel that I didn't touch up properly before. Now, this one is also important and also entirely optional, is to paint these studs in metal, giving it the leather protection here, the final look. Going over here, just a dot or two is enough. And it really makes a difference when you do this, because it really is. It really brings out the life of the model. So this one looks quite okay already. And if you finish there, you can actually leave it like this. But I'm going to take it one step further and I'm going to paint the eyes, which is extremely difficult for me. I'm really, really bad at it. So we're going to start off with some pure white, which is Citadel's white, and we're going to paint the start with the white. If it doesn't work, you'll just go back and paint it over with the original skin color. And here we'll simply paint a dot here in the white. Going over here so you can see it. Using a fine tip brush and as much control as you have. And making sure you get it right in the dead center. Probably gonna make a mistake now. Something like this. And try to get it shaped horizontally a little bit if you can. So like this. Leaving this one to dry entirely, and while it dries we can also paint the base while it dries entirely. I'm going to use some Citadel Colors Technical Astrogranite for this one, closing the paint pot as we go along. And for this one it's quite a thick muddy color, so I'm going to use an old dry brush here and dry brush here, caking it in with lots of paint, and here covering the paint with the bottom with some grey. You can use another colour of your choice, of course, brown or grey or black or red or whatever you want, but I think this one contrasts well with the colours we've used and it's not too dominant. Okay, and well, we have done this one. The whites have almost completely dried. I hope they dry completely. And then we can use some black, Abaddon black, mass black, anything you want. This from Armor Painter. And we only need one single small dot. That's the only thing we need. Can we manage this? I hope we can. And this means I'm going to use a size 1 brush. Size 0 brush will be even better. Size 2 might work if the tip is good enough. And we'll see how good I am with this one. Alright, she looks like she's staring a little bit, but maybe she's staring down at the next bounty or something like that. It's not perfect, but you probably get the hang of it much faster than I do. So this is Elspeth the Warrior Princess from Karak the board game, published by Albi Games. And if you like this video, please consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate that. For those of you who have subscribed to my channel, thank you so much to all of you. And I'll see you next time in another video, whether it's going to be Karak or something else. We'll see. Thank you very much for watching.